Today we're at Alabama Marine Resources. We're getting a tour by a guy named Graham that works here, and they hatch fish here. They hatch hatch fish, release them in the wild, go catch fish in the wild, bring them back here, hatch more fish. We're gonna tour it, and we're gonna learn all about this hatchery today. It's rainy and nasty. Can't do anything else. We might as well have fun. Yeah.
And then we can open a couple of valves, and we can send water from the Gulf State Pier directly to our hatchery. So have y'all been to the Gulf State Pier before?
No.
You know the big pier, you know what I'm talking about? That right out in the middle where the bathrooms are, kind of out where the octagon used to be, there's a big intake under that. And we press a button on our phone and it kicks on these big, huge pumps. And it sends water 2.5 miles under Lake Shelby, under the canal, all the way back to our facility. So that makes it really easy for us to have raw seawater. So we can do water exchanges when we need to. We can change out water, and we can do all the things that we need to do without having to worry about saving water. Peroxide dip. They'll go into these tanks for a minimum of 2 weeks. We'll hit them with copper sulfate, which is a chemical that kills all the parasites. And once they're done with their quarantine system, they can be used into the breeding population.
Holy cow, they're fast.
So these right here are pompano. We have this side.
Can I put this in the water?
Sir?
Can I put my camera?
Yeah, go for it.
That's awesome.
So those
Our filters.
One thing real quick is be careful in this water right here. This system has chlorine in it.
You smell it.
Yeah, be real careful. I got a whiff of it. Thought I would tell you. Don't reach in or anything like that.
See y'all cleaning,
We're cleaning these things.
getting these ready for new.
So those are lava-lamps. What those do is that grows a good type of bacteria. And all the fish waste, all the bad stuff that the fish use, is converted that bad stuff.
So these are growing good bacteria, and it's also trapping the waste from the fish. That's awesome.
Those are the biggest river there, aren't they?
Huh? Yeah. Here's more pompano over here. They call this the racetrack. That's what he was saying. They get them ready for spawning, producing eggs for new pompanos. They're growing shrimp here. Millions of them. So Auburn, he was telling us Auburn does studies where they figure out how much food to give the shrimp over a certain amount of time to grow them the fastest possible way in farm-raised shrimp. So in America we don't do farm-raised shrimp, but they do it in other countries as a source of revenue. And just look at all these shrimp. As long as it's okay with you.
It's fine with us, man, but he said he was allergic to them, so I didn't.
Oh, if he's not, yeah. Probably shouldn't eat them. It's probably.
Why are some of them like have the pink tails on them? I thought they just turned pink like that when they were cooked.
Like this right here, that's just the coloration in them, just the difference in.
So is this guy carrying food?
That's a dead shrimp. Yeah, that's they like to eat each other. They're cannibalistic.
idealistic. So.
Okay, so I don't
Or
really
opportunistic, I should say. If a shrimp's dead, like this one floating right here, they'll find it and
They'll get
eat
it.
it.
So you don't really have to worry about cleaning out that much. They'll take care of it. The filter and
See
them.
how cloudy this water is?
Yeah.
We do big exchanges. That one's eating. Yeah, that one's eating. So what they do is they pick off the antennas, the eyeballs, and the legs first, and then they'll.
Yeah, because that one's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually harvested a pond yesterday, so this is fresh from the pond shrimp. You could if you wanted to, yeah. I might not want to right now, but
They probably make a pretty good sandwich.
yeah. What you got, buddy? They do tend to eat each other, yeah.
It's a puzzle.
Yes, it is. It is probably.
Got her leg.
So these little black boxes that you see right here, those are chiller units. So during the summertime, we don't have air conditioning in this part of the office. This water temperature is really hot. So
Also really cold right now.
the fish don't like the hot water. It doesn't hold oxygen very well. They can't breathe in it. So those chiller units actually cool the water. But yeah, I always try to show folks this.
So this is a coral filter. Look at all them filters. This is a coral filter. That's what he's telling us. And then you have a jacuzzi pump, a sand filter, and out of the sand filter, you're going down to a UV light. And the UV light kills anything that made it through. The coral filter is a like a natural filter, and the sand filter is also a natural filter, but just a different type. And then the UV light kills anything that can make it through those two filters that's not healthy for
Any of the little
the fish.
sheets that you see there, the little silver screens. I think this is our only one that doesn't have fish in it.
They all got different stuff. These right here have surface area. It has the most surface area per area that they can put in these filters, and it changes ammonia that the fish are putting out to a nitrite or nitrate that is usable for fish growth. What's in here? Flounder. So they're growing southern flounder,
I said there.
and the flounder has some shrimp in there for food. Wow, that's a big one over there. Oh, sorry. You okay?
See, y'all see those shrimp that are in there? Those came from that tank that y'all were just catching shrimp in. That's their food.
There's pompano. And they changed the amount of daylight. This guy was telling us. They changed the amount of daylight and the temperature in there to get them to spawn. Because they only spawn when the conditions are right for a number of daylight hours and the temperature of the water. Oh, look at that trout. It's a gator trout. Big gator trout. Wow. Huge speckled trout. You want to look right here?
I don't even know what a speckled trout looks like. Look there.
It's
Oh,
a
wow.
speckled sea trout.
Whoa.
I bet you them trout are happy that I'm out here and there and there.
Yeah, there's some studs in there.
So they increase the saltwater content, or salt content that will increase the salinity. They have these troughs. Fishery inside of this big vat, and it's a big fiberglass vat, big tank, and they increase the salinity, and the eggs will actually float up. Whenever they're spawning, they'll increase the salinity. The eggs float up, it comes through this trough. The trough gets deeper as it comes across. Right here is probably 2 foot deep, and they have an oxygen source here to make sure the eggs have oxygen, and they can collect the eggs because they increase the salinity. They float up, and it's a circular flow, circular flow of water. It's always flowing in a positive direction towards this vat. And they collect the eggs, and then they can turn those eggs back into more fish.
The bottoms of the tanks, if it was something in their diet, their food, something that was causing them to have the miscoloration. These right over here are going to be the ones that were the miscolored ones. These right here are going to be our controls. These all came from the same batch of eggs. But as you can see, these right here are ghost flounder. Those are the ones that are lacking their pigment. These over here were the ones that were clean. They were pigmented well, sufficiently.
So these flounder do not have a pigment.
They are missing part of their pigment. Some of them more than others, but most of them have some kind of pigmentation, almost like a piebald deer. It's just a miscoloration in genetics.
These are the controls. Yeah. So that's their natural color, is that more camouflage state. And it's they were saying it's a natural phenomenon with farm raised or hatchery raised flounder, that some of them lose their pigmentation, their natural pigmentation. They call it ghost flounder. And they're doing an experiment to figure out if they're a genetic difference, if it's a food difference, or if it's the color of the tank difference. And some of these are a control, and some of them are tests, and they change their diets and to see if it's food related, environment related, or if it's just a phenomenon that happens in nature that we don't necessarily notice because they're so hard to find to prove whether it's a phenomenon that happens in nature. And if these are being hatched in nature naturally, in the bays and in the Gulf, maybe they're just being eaten by fish because they're not camouflaged. The natural selection is just weeding them out of the population before we can actually notice it because they're not camouflaged. They get high. So these were all flowers.
But what you want to do is you'll just want to grab a little pinch full like that right there and throw it in there to the tank for them. Watch them come up. They may be nervous right now.
Oh, I just saw one snag. They're in a frenzy. Once it floods down, they get it.
Normally they're like little piranhas. As soon as they come up, as soon as food hits the water, they come up and they start munching on it. But they don't like company. They don't like a lot of people being around them. They like being left alone.
Probably not used to it.
Oh, exactly. They're not. They're used to seeing the blue shirts come up and feeding them, and then they scatter when a bunch of people get around.
These are confident. They're letting them feed them. And they control their diet very, very closely. Each pompano gets 400 grams of shrimp and 400 grams of squid per day.
You want to throw a couple of pieces in? Yeah. There you go. Don't throw too big of a handful. There we go.
Kind of a lot and kind of not.
Good.
Think about it. How big will these get before they get released?
So these right here were actually caught with a cast net off the front beach. So what we're doing is these are, I thought I saw one doing something weird over there. We're actually going to grow these out. So we're going to take these and grow them up. We caught these about 2 months ago. So we're going to take them and they will become broodstock eventually. But they are much smaller. All of our fish that we release, we usually release them when they're about 1 inch to 1.5 inches long. Depending on the species of fish, that can be anywhere from 3 or 4 weeks all the way up to 50 days. So the flounder take a little bit longer to reach their full length, but whenever they get to about 1 inch long, they can kind of fend for themselves, and we'll release them then.
What's that tube?
This tube, so this allows that water to go back down into the drain without the fish going down the hole.
I think that's for feet.
And these are the left-handed side.
Well, they're not all left-eyed, but I just happen to see a predominantly left-eyed one right here, that big dark one.
Yeah.
That one's a left-eye in comparison to the one right beside it. You want more? Here you go, buddy. So, you see that big green box right there? That gets filled
So
up
what
with
he's
this
saying
stuff
is,
every day.
they call
So
it that
whenever we
black
leave,
one right there is a
pop it
left
up a
eye,
little bit,
meaning
they
that
start
it's
eating
almost,
food.
it's a mirror image of the one right next to it. You can see where the mouth is oriented in relation to the eye, and that's what he was saying about left eye, right eye, meaning that you know, it's almost like you flip them over and put the mouth and the eyes on the wrong side. Just how they are. Left-handed, right-handed kind of deal, where people are left-hand dominant or left eye dominant. These fish, for whatever reason, they form their mouth and their eyes on the other side of the body. Only a couple of them in there, not all of them.
So, y'all notice there's something else that's kind of cool about a few of these flounder that are in here. Look, there's a couple of them, like look at that guy right there, look at its tail. It's missing a notch out of its tail, isn't it? So, what we've done is we have taken what we call fin clips off of some of these flounder, and we have sent them to Auburn, and they are going to try to create a genetic bank for us. So, in the future, we can't do it right now, but in the future, what we're hoping to be able to determine is, say this guy goes out and he catches a wild flounder and he turns it into us, or he clips off the tail and gives that to us. We can run that through a computer and we can tell if that flounder that he turned into us was released by our lab, or if it was the baby of one of the fish that was released by our lab. It's really cool, isn't it? We don't have that technology just yet, but we are in the process of trying to create a bank to hold all of these fin clips in, so we can do that with all of our fish. So hopefully in the future, we'll know how many actually survive to adulthood and can reproduce.
That's pretty awesome.
That is, it's pretty cool. I've really enjoyed being a part of that, and I'm looking forward to that becoming a more common practice. I want to see the results of that.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't have a way to determine how many of our fish that we release make it to adulthood. We don't have an actual number. We've heard anything from 3% all the way up to 25% of all of our fish that we release make it. So that's a really wide gap.
That's big. Big window.
It is a big window.
You really want to know how effective you're being. Just
Exactly.
because you want to know if you did a good job or not.
Yes, sir. So a cool thing about these is the flounder, they estimate that there's only around 150,000 flounder that come into Mobile Bay for breeding each year. So we have to be really careful about how many flounder that we put back into the population, so we don't put too many flounder in and mess up that genetic gene pool, and you start getting some funky flounder that way.
Yeah.
So we've got to be really careful about the numbers that we produce for flounder. What's up, buddy? They'll be big enough to release in 30 days.
These are 7 days old speckled trout, and they are literally, how long would you say they are?
Do what, sir?
How long? Millimeters long? 5 millimeters?
Oh, if that. They're tiny.
So there's 1,000 eggs per milliliter
of water.
of water. And then about 50 50 milliliters goes per tank, or how many?
So what we'll do is once we quantify how many eggs we have,
Yeah.
we'll bring them over into these right here. So these are designed with the cones in the bottom, and the way we have the air stones set up to create an upwelling, to keep the eggs moving and tumbling. And they will actually hatch in these tanks.
They're hatching here.
They'll hatch in here, and then we will harvest them from right here, and then disperse them based on how many we get into each tank. I couldn't give you an actual number of how many. We just try to divide them evenly. So we got 1 million eggs last Wednesday.
1 million eggs.
So even if 80% of those made it, 100,000. And then
They'll be ready to go in the bay in how long?
in about a month to a month and a half.
And
30 to 40 days.
And how many hatchings do y'all do a year?
This will be for the actual January to December, I think this is number 4 or 5 for us this year. Our fiscal year is different than our calendar year.
So that's upwards of 3 million speckled trout.
We don't release that many. There is a high percentage of die-off, and it's just normal in hatchery settings. We have 1 million eggs. We may release 100, 200,000 would be a far stretch, but I would say between 100 and 200,000 is usually what hits the water.
Okay.
So
That's still a lot.
yes, sir.
A lot.
Our numbers for the fiscal year of 2022, I have written down on the board because I can't ever remember. Our numbers this year are dramatically higher in every category over here. But for the fiscal year of 2022, we released over 5,000 pompano, 215,000 trout, and 118,000
Flounce.
But this year, our numbers have blown those out of the water.
Really?
What's up, buddy? They like to jump a lot, so we have to put the nets over them like this to keep them from jumping out.
So these are pompano tanks, and the reason the netting is on there is to keep the pompano from jumping out of the tank.
Yeah, that's a
because
big
they
threat.
like to jump so much.
Oh, there's a dead dragonfly.
And everything that you see in these little tanks right here came from our facility. We did produce these. These are lab raised.
You see, he just jumped. One just jumped.
That was a
If y'all want to see more along the size of what actually gets released in the wild, you can actually right over
These
here.
are trout in here, huh? Yeah, I see.
Larger.
There's a trout right there.
Yeah, this right here is the size. Maybe a little bit smaller. These are grown in the
Pompano.
last couple of weeks. But this
These
is
are
about
trout.
the size of what they get released at. So we take a bunch of nets.
So those are spotted
net
sea
up
trout.
all of the fish.
Hatchery
and we'll put
grown
them
right
into a
here in
big
Gulf
water
Shores,
cooler.
Alabama.
And we'll take that water cooler where we want to release them at and drop them into the water that way.
These are speckled trout. Hatchery grown speckled trout. These are a couple of weeks old.
It's dry. It's completely dry. It's like
Almost ready to go. They'll get released. Oh, you see that one
that's
jump?
why there's nets over them. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so this
yeah.
is pompano, that's speckled trout.
Speckled trout.
So how do you know the little minnows what they are?
Man.
Can you, I know you can. Is there a way?
Let's see here.
So in these tanks, they're growing microorganisms that they use to feed the fish, the babies. The new hatchlings are so small that they can't swallow any kind of pelletized food for nourishment. So they would just die if they didn't have something to eat. So they're actually growing a type of plankton. So he calls it a water bug or a water beetle, but it's a microorganism. Like you have a microscope over there they're looking at to actually show the kids we brought. Some of my son's friends and from school and stuff like that, but they're actually monitoring the water quality, and every day it's somebody's job to make sure that he's calling them the bugs, kind of like a plankton. Somebody's job is to monitor these, make sure that they're growing them, make sure they have enough water, and then take them over to the hatchlings, and they feed them to the hatchlings. That's the reason why the water was green in the hatchling tanks. So they have to have food. And they're growing their own food. It's pretty awesome. These are flesh-eating beetles, and you can see that there are fish carcasses in there that they, if they have a fish die, they'll put them in there, let the flesh-eating beetles consume the carcass, and the bones are left over. And eventually you end up with something like this. Cool little science project.
Don't touch the dragonflies.
Look at them teeth.
We don't want to break them.
Dragonflies? Well,
It's a sheep's head.
that's another Graham project. That's not necessarily a
Flounder.
project.
That's just when you go around.
Here, look
And
at
there's some
these.
speckled trout that didn't make it.
Imagine going to bed and seeing these little bugs crawling